John Henry, told by Denzel Washington, with music by B.B. King.
Way back a good while ago, when the United States was still busting out of his baby shoes, there lived a man named John Henry. Now, ain't no history book's gonna tell you about John Henry, because he was just too plain big for them books. But when it comes right down to it, John Henry was the mightiest, doggone greatest nation builder this country's ever seen. Oh, sure, you had your Washingtons and your Jeffersons, but they was just presidents. You see, John Henry was a steel-driving man. Now, some folks think they know all about John Henry and his famous race with the steam drill, but most of them don't even know a steel steak from a beefsteak. See, I was around when John Henry was king of the railroad camps, and I remember him just as clear as the Kentucky moon on an August night. So y'all listen up, because I'm going to tell you the guaranteed, gold-plated, 99.9% truth about John Henry. Now, it all started in a little village way down south in cotton country. Mama and Papa Henry were just your ordinary sharecropping folk, no different from the rest of us. They lived in a log cabin, and one springtime morning, Mama Henry gave birth to a baby named John Henry. Now, folks knew right away there was something different about John Henry. Shoot, ain't no ordinary baby born with a hammer in his hand. And ain't no ordinary baby weighs over 45 pounds. But John Henry did, and that wasn't even the strange part. Not 2 hours out of his mama's belly, John Henry ups and starts talking. Oh, if it ain't too much trouble, he said, just as sweet as sugar. Would y'all mind bringing me something to eat? I'm mighty hungry. Now, nobody ever heard a 2-hour-old baby talking before. But after a while, Mama Henry asked John Henry what he wanted to eat. Well, he said, figuring and calculating on his fingers, I'd like 8 ham bones, 2 pots of black-eyed peas, a 3-foot slab of cornbread, 3 kettles of cabbage soup, a big heap of collard greens, 4 pans of peach cobbler, and 2 pots of coffee, strong coffee. That is, if it ain't too much bother. So John Henry ate pretty good. And he was so tuckered out when he was done, by Jiminy, he slept for a solid week. Well, the years went by and John Henry grew bigger. At 2 years old, he was juggling chickens for fun. At 6, he was wrestling with razorback hogs and juggling chickens at the same time. And at 10, John Henry was already a teenager. But there was nothing in the whole wide world that John Henry liked more than swinging a hammer and singing a song. He'd hammer hickory sticks. He'd hammer fence posts, cooking pots, brass nails, boulders, anything he could get his hands on. He'd pound in the morning, clang in the evening. His arms grew as solid as oak stumps, and his chest busted out bigger than a barrel. Why, he grew so big that one day he couldn't even fit through the front door of his parents' cabin. And that's when John Henry decided it was time to leave home. Mama, he said one morning, I'm a man now. I'm a natural man. And I'm gonna find me a job with a hammer in my hand. So John Henry left home, and he walked north through the countryside. And as the sun went down at night, making the whole land light up like fire, he sang a song to himself.
Yeah, my name's John Henry, and I'm a natural man. I was born hand. And if one day I find myself out all alone, I'll hammer till the evening, pound my way back home, pound my way back home, pound my way back home, pound my way back home.
One afternoon, while he was walking in the lonesome woods, he stumbled across a road of iron rails. Those rails sparkled in the sunshine like silver, and beneath them was freshly cut wood ties, which smelled sweeter than a bag of balsam. And John Henry exclaimed to no one in particular, "By Jiminy, if this ain't a railroad track, then I'm an ox and a moron both at the same time." Now, John Henry, who was no ox and certainly no moron, was correct in his assessment. He had in fact stumbled onto the great Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad line, which was just being built around that time. The C&O line, as people like to call it, was going to connect up the eastern with the midwestern part of the United States. The railroad cut through some of the deepest, darkest, most howling wilderness of West Virginia, along hills and hollers, up mountains and down valleys, through woods as thick as a cornfield in cutting time. Well, John Henry knew right away he was on to something big. And after a day of following those rails, he reached the top of a rise. And from that rise, he saw where the tracks ended, far in the valley, and a whole assembly of men were living and working. From up there, he could hear the clang and clink of hammers hitting steel stakes. And to John Henry, it was the sound of heaven itself. A beautiful harmony of hammers ringing over the hills like songbirds in early spring. "Now that's a job for me," John Henry yelled, beaming from ear to ear. "A job for a natural man who wants to build this land with a hammer in his hand." With that, John Henry scrambled down that rise as fast as his feet could take him. And when he got to camp, he was amazed. It was like nothing he had ever seen before. There were men from all over the world working together with hammers. There were black men and brown men and red men. There were yellow men and white men too. So when John Henry got to camp, he just pushed his way straight ahead to the end of the line, picked up a 9-pound hammer and started driving steel stakes like it was going out of style. Clang, hitting here. Bang, hitting there. Ding, hitting this one. Dang, hitting that one. Well, after a while, everyone on that line stopped what they was doing and started looking at this rather large, enthusiastic stranger.